Welcome to the podcast, where something is amiss, something is a mess, and we'll discuss some things MS, multiple sclerosis. This podcast is meant to tell the stories of those living day to day with MS, from before they were diagnosed, getting that diagnosis, the aftermath, and where they are today in their journey with multiple sclerosis. And now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Some Things MS. And welcome back to Some Things MS, where we're discussing some things that are amiss, some things that are a mess, and some things MS. And I am excited to have somebody from the MS Society here, Crystal Fiederl. God, we just went over this. Crystal Fiederl. I don't know why I said fedora because of the hat. Oh my goodness. Anyway, welcome to the podcast, and sorry for killing your name there.
Okay. My whole life is like this. It's okay.
I got a boring name like Bobby Small. That's easy. I mean, anybody that messes, I'm not going a little blue, but I get a lot of booby, but not speaking, but writing, like email. Probably every third email I get from somebody and even people I know, it's, hey, booby. And then they get a follow-up right after, like, oh man, sorry I called you booby.
So
it's totally cool. You don't have to worry about it. Anyway, welcome, Crystal. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Why don't we just start really quickly with a little introduction about yourself, outside of the MS Society and what we'll be talking about, multiple sclerosis, but just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Crystal. I moved to Colorado about 2.5 years ago, specifically to work for the society, ironically. I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, up and down Washington, Oregon, and I've also lived in Montana for a while as well. I have 2 dogs. They're amazing, but that's really about it, I guess. Oh, and I like vinyl, obviously.
Yeah, if I switch it over, you can kind of see the edge of my vinyl.
Yeah.
You can see over there. You can see that's just the edge of the vinyl collection.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about that later, just because I was going to talk to you about vinyl. And I was just going to say, I had the chance to visit. I've got a weird thing where I've been in touch with my 5th grade teacher. We got in touch on Facebook, just before the pandemic, and she was my favorite, actually, one of my 2 favorite teachers of all time, and she lives in Spokane Valley.
Oh.
And so I took a trip and visited her. I did Seattle and the islands, just to the west, and then up into Vancouver, and then drove out to Spokane Valley.
Yeah, the San Juan Islands.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah. It was perfect weather. Like there was no rain, and it was like 75, 80 degrees in May. It was May last year.
Oh, that's your 2 days of good weather in Seattle. Good job.
I know. I'll hit them. Awesome. So cool. Yeah. So you came here to join the MS Society, but let's just obviously step back and talk a little bit about, what you know about MS. Like, when was your first, recollection of understanding what multiple sclerosis is?
Yeah, so I have a personal connection to MS. My grandma on my mom's side, her name was Jackie. She lived with MS, and she passed away in 98 when I was 7. So back in the 90s, I guess, for starters, obviously we had not a lot of options, a lot of treatments. We really didn't know anything about what MS was. And so it directly affected my family. My grandma was in a wheelchair, and she had lost most of her mobility and speaking, but she was still an awesome person. And I mean, I remember going to like the grocery store because we lived with my grandparents, and my brother and I would ride on like the pedestal of her wheelchair through Fred Meyer, which like the grocery store.
Yeah.
And we never nothing ever stopped us from like involving her in anything. So to me, it was just like she's just like everybody else. It didn't really matter. Like we would go hiking and my grandpa would like, push her up the mountain so we could go hiking together as a family. Or we lived in Washington and we would go to the beach a lot. And so he would push her out onto the sand. So, she could still feel the water on her toes and play in the sand with us as much as she could as we were kids. And so though it was not a great experience for her and then losing her when I was so young, but to me, that was like my first experience. And then when I later in life learned that more people have MS, I immediately just thought about my grandma because I didn't know anything else. And I was like, oh my gosh, but obviously things have changed so drastically since 1998.
Yeah. Yeah. And so 1998. So just if you remember, did you know what the disease was, or just that she was in a wheelchair and that was the extent of it?
I knew that she had MS or had multiple sclerosis because my grandpa and my mom and I, like, we kind of talked about it, but I don't think really anybody in my family 100% knew what it was, just more that it was affecting her in this way. But we didn't, and even if we did talk about it, I probably couldn't comprehend it because I was 7. And my brother, because I've talked to my brother about it a few times, especially now that I work here. And he says he barely remembers anything. So his memory is even looser than mine is.
Yeah. But still enough of an impact that it shaped your career down the line, which is pretty amazing. Just to kind of come back in full circle on that, later on in life to say, hey, this, even though I might not have known a lot about it at the time, it was still impactful enough to see that you wanted to help people. And so what were do you recall what the resources were like? Because obviously now we've got tons of medication options and, wonderful resources at hand. Your grandpa sounded like it was awesome and making sure that your grandmother was taken care of. But what about, did they use resources available, through a society or is it just kind of, she had it and that was it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember any of us ever talking with the society in the Seattle area, which would probably been our closest chapter.
Yeah.
I don't remember anybody ever coming to our house or talking to us as a family. They never went to like special doctor's appointments or anything like that. I just mostly remember like towards the end when she was getting worse and worse, and she would just have like a major relapse, and they would take her to the hospital because that was all we knew.
Yeah.
And I think like, I don't know if it's like funny or if it's sad at the same time, but I just remember the first time it happened, the doctors kind of told my grandpa, they were like, we're sorry, like there's nothing else that we can do for her. She's probably not going to like make it through the night. And so we're like, okay, we all, like the rest of us came to the hospital and like said our goodbyes. And then the next morning she woke up and she was happy as a clam and ready to go about her day.
Yeah.
And that happened twice. And then come to find out, all she wanted was to be able to not be in a hospital, and she wanted to be around her family. And so when she had that, then she was able to let go.
Yeah, sure.
They never gave her anything. They just more like just told us like, be prepared.
Yeah. It's a testament to, again, the advancements that have been made in not just treatment, but support as well. Getting the word out. Again, that's what I created this podcast for, and so many others do it. And we all post and take care to make sure people know there are resources and, again, it sounds like your grandmother was well taken care of, but just that there are resources out there that are super helpful. So you fast forward now. So you had the personal connection. At what point did you realize you wanted to, was it just happenstance that you just saw an opening, or did you really target a career at the MS Society?
No, I actually like chose a couple of different paths along the way. I mean, after my grandma had passed, I didn't really get reconnected. We didn't do anything as a family about it. We kind of just, handled it and celebrated in like our own way as a family. And then I guess fast forward to like 18, 20, 25. I was in college, and then I was living in Oregon, and I worked at a bank. And it was a very small community bank outside of Portland. And when I joined the bank, they were very, very heavy about volunteering. Like, they encouraged us to volunteer. They actually paid us 40 hours a year to volunteer. So there was no limits on what we could volunteer. So it was really what we were passionate about. So if we were passionate about animals, we could go volunteer at the Animal Society. And so the only two things that I knew about volunteering was the MS Society and the library, because I was very involved in the library in high school. And so I was like, well, I'll just do both and see what I like better. And so I started a walk team my first year. This was 2014 in outside of Portland. And I started a bank team because I was like, well, these are the only people that I really know is in Portland. And then I was a personal banker there, but we put up signs, and we had, like, you know, the thermometer that was like, oh, we've raised this much money so far as a bank. And we got the other branches involved. And then people started coming in to make deposits or withdrawals or banking transactions. And I had two people that came up. One was a CPA, and he was like, why are you guys doing this? And I was like, oh, well, I started a team because I have a connection, and, you know, we're all about volunteering and providing back to the community. And he was like, well, I have MS. And I was like, oh, whoa. And that was the third person I had ever met with MS. And that was like, it was a lot for me at first. I was like, I didn't even know that there was this many people. And then the last person was this girl. She was the same age as me at the time. And so she was like 23, I think. And she had a small child, and her family owned a pretty large car dealership conglomerate throughout, like, the Portland metro area. Yeah. And she came in and she told me that she had MS, and her MS was a little more progressive than others. And so then I made a pretty big mission to, like, be more involved with her and her family. And then, you know, fast forward again in life, her family is Landfear Auto Group, and they are now the chapter sponsor for the Oregon Southwest Washington chapter because of involvement too with them. So that was, and then keep going, and I just keep meeting more and more people. And then I realized I just kind of want to work here. Like, I want to make I liked my job, and I loved working in banking and helping people in that regard. But I was like, I just want to do more. I want to be able to, you know, tell people's story in a different light, tell my own story, and just make people more aware of what's going on. And so in 2020, I went back to school to get a different degree so I could work here, and put all my eggs in one basket and started driving to Colorado in hopes that they would hire me. And luckily, Erica, she said yes. So it worked out in my favor.
Yeah. So I'm going to, as I maybe I misheard. I thought you were working at the Oregon chapter before you came out here.
No, in Oregon, I was a walk manager. I'm sorry, a walker. And then I met the bike MS manager at one of the walk events. And I was like, oh, well, this bike ride thing seems kind of cool. Yeah. And so I volunteered the next year at it. And then I was like, bike is awesome. I was like, I want everything about bike. And so I would volunteer all 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You could go camping in Oregon. So, and I had a tent trailer. So I'd roll out my tent trailer and stay there all weekend. And it was just like, it was the greatest thing ever. And so then I volunteered. I sat on the committee. I actually joined the Oregon Southwest Washington board for a little bit as well before I moved here. And then I actually rode and biked 1 year as well. So I've kind of played a lot of roles.
Yeah, I don't know how I somehow thought you were working at the Oregon chapter. You were just leading it from outside the Oregon chapter, which is just awesome. That you were so impactful that it just seemed like you worked there. But then to kind of just put, like you said, to kind of put the faith in something you really wanted, go get the degree you needed, and to come here and land the job that you're doing. That's pretty awesome. I tip the hat to that. Yeah.
it was a journey, you know, moving here, and I didn't know a single person. I was just like, I wanted to work for the society, and I specifically wanted to work on Bike MS because to me it was like the, you know, the everything. It just was so impactful and so much fun. And Bike MS Colorado is a lot larger than the Oregon ride. And so I was so excited to see, you know, what a different ride looked like and to meet more people and grow my community better.
Yeah. I mean, each of the events are so different. Like you said, different people, different types of people. And so bike is different than walk, and they're cool in their own way, but just different vibes. And yeah, wherever you go, Bike MS is, I'd love to get up. You know, we've sent a team to Oregon. We've sent a team to Seattle. And they just have, again, I've a lot of, you were talking before, I've got a lot of travel, and with that one in particular, it happens to fall, the Seattle one happens to fall on, and I think the Oregon one did too. They fall in September, and that I'm usually doing a musical those weekends. So I've been unable to get out there, but it sounds like beautiful rides. I've driven over to, when I was out in Washington before, we drove over Deception Pass, of course, to get off the islands, and just can't imagine how beautiful it would be to ride that.
Yeah, I think, you know, Deception Pass is on my like bucket list of rides as well, because I think, you know, just the ride itself sounds so great and the pictures look awesome. But I think like the fun fact that maybe not everybody knows about Deception Pass ride is that the police actually escort you across the bridge during Bike MS weekend, which I think that's pretty cool in itself.
Yeah, I did not know that. Yeah, that's fun. I always heard that from teammates, but that's a pretty cool thing. And like you said, that one's also camping, I believe. There's no, you know, quaint dorm rooms like we use here in Colorado, or it's old school camping, which is cool. The first ride I did was in Virginia, and it was also camping. It was held at a like the overnight was at a, or that was an out in the back. This was an out and back, yeah. So it was 2 loops, but it was at a little commune out in Virginia. And yeah, just, you know, lots of people camping, and there were a few dorm rooms, but I didn't know about them at the time, so I was just camping. So it was definitely fun, different way to do it for sure.
Yeah, there are dorm room. Well, back then there were dorm rooms for Oregon, but I was like, I have a trailer. I'll just use my trailer. But yeah, the Oregon ride moved, and so it's at a different location, different route, different everything now. So yeah.
And you plopped into this ride right in the middle of pandemic, which is also awesome.
Yeah, well, I came on staff in 2021, so right afterwards. But I did help the Oregon ride during the pandemic, and I helped them move, like, you know, when we did the virtual ride and creating content for, you know, the Facebook page to try to make people feel as welcome and involved, and, you know, start getting as much engagement as possible. So I helped with all of that. And so though I wasn't feeling all of like the pressure as like the staff part of it, but it still felt like a lot, because I was like, I still want this to be great. I still want everybody to have a great time. And, you know, I want to still see all the pictures of people on their bikes. And I think it was, you know, across the board, I think we did as good of a job as we probably could have, and almost better in some senses. Because for Oregon, at least, I remember so many people that were posting pictures with their kids under 12. And so you had all of these cute bikes, like with the tassels off the sides and the cards on their head, like the wheels. You know?
Old school. Yeah, I love it.
Like, and you have to be 12 to ride in Bike MS across the country. And so it was kind of fun to see all these cute kids with their bikes, like supporting their moms, dad, grandparents, you know, neighbors out doing a safest ride as possible. So that was kind of fun and a very different experience than we would have normally had. So
and but since you started then in 2021, it's really, I mean, even that was a comeback year. I'm sure that attendance was down. People were still, 2021 was still kind of like the rebound pandemic year where things were just kind of creeping out of and I believe that was a 1-day ride. Was that? Yeah, that was just a 1-day ride that year.
Yep. So I think, again, you know, everyone is still apprehensive about whether they wanted to come out. I think, you know, the blessing is that biking is, one, outside, and 2, you're not really around people. And so, because everybody has their different, you know, pacing on their bike. And so, you know, I think we did a good job of like creating as best waves of start times to break out people, so that
I remember.
you know, you're not so clustered together. And so I think, you know, even though it was one day, a lot of people did miss that 2-day event, but we're just happy to still have something back in their life, which was better than the nothing we had the year before.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird year. Like we did our team. We I feel like just amazed and proud of our team and the leadership during that pandemic year, because we decided that just for the sheer fact of honoring our donors and giving them something to still donate to, we staged a 2-day ride, fully supported. We had SAG team and lunch stops and rest stops, and just it was amazing to see it come together. Did a route down south, did a route up north, just all starting from I want to say we started from Cherry Creek Res the first time, and then rode south from there. And then the second one we did more in the north. I can't remember where we started though. I think we started somewhere up in Wheat Ridge, to jump on, and then did part of the MS route. We drove up through Hygiene and kind of around that area and back down. Not quite as far as Fort Collins, but still did. I think both days we ended up doing 70 miles at a short route for people who are doing it, kind of for the folks who just wanted to do a smaller loop on day one. We had a 30 mile loop. But again, it was fun to see everybody. We've had most of our team. We had 25, 30 people. And like you said, it felt safe. It was funny. Somebody was pointing out our team picture that year. We did take the team picture and it was spread apart. So they were like, everybody was kind of 6 feet apart. So
like panoramic.
Sure, it was funny to see and go back and look. It's like, yep, that was the pandemic year.
Yeah.
And everybody's masked up, of course, while we were not riding.
I mean, I think that just goes to show like how important Bike MS is, right? Like, we tried, not that we wanted to take it away, but we were not able to have it. But everybody wants it, needs it, appreciates it, looks forward to it so much. They're like, okay, well, if you're not going to do it for us, then I'm just going to do it myself. Yeah.
And like you said, there were so many people doing it virtually. There were other teams that did virtual. Yeah. There were other teams that did rides. We weren't the only ones. There were a number of people who just kind of said, hey, we still want to do this. We care so much about this event and this charity, this cause, that we have to get on the bike and we have to do this. We've been waiting. I've talked about almost every podcast I've done. We've talked about event hangover. When the event's over, you hate it and you want to not be over. And so, people are ready to jump right in and just do it because it's just, it's just so ingrained and you hate for it not to go off. So
that's how I feel. I mean, it's very different when going from a rider or volunteer to staff member, because obviously my role is a lot different than just showing up on my bike and riding my X amount of miles. Not that that's any easy task by any means, but I feel like even as a staff member, I definitely still feel event hangover, like Sunday, definitely into Monday. I'm like, we're done. What else do we do? It's kind of like when you leave Disney World, kind of how I make it feel. I'm like, but I don't want to go, and I'm kicking and screaming and holding on to the fence. I'm like, no, we're not done yet.
Right, and Goofy's got to come up, and Donald. They got both of them. Like, it's time to go. You throw it out the door, right?
Exactly. No, that's how I feel.
That's funny. Yeah, it feels like it would almost be like a catch-22. Like part of you, like I've done event planning before on a not as large a scale as you're doing, but on a large enough scale that I'm kind of happy because it's like, whew, finally, you get to the event. We've talked about this. I think you and I and other people. There's only a certain point you get to the event, it's going, and that's it. Whatever's happening is happening. So you're into it. And then you're kind of a little bit relieved that part of the planning and the stress around planning and all that anxiety around, is it going to be a good event? Everything's going to be the way we want it. That part is over. But then, like you said, there's still the part that you really enjoy now that's happening, the happening part of it that has to end. So there's kind of a dual side of it.
Yeah. I think the only thing we can't control is the weather. And as far as every time I've done a Colorado ride so far, we've been lucky. So I'm just going to hope you're going to keep that luck going.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I feel like, we've had, things like before you got here, we've had some days that were cut short by tornadoes. We've had some really hot weather, some colder weather, but mostly it's usually pretty manageable. It hasn't been like train wreck weather.
Yeah, I think that's the plus side.
Again, sometimes, it could be really bad. So on day 2, you brought something unique to day 2, which to start the event on day 2. Talk a little bit about that, because that's been really, impactful. I didn't know what to expect, but man, it really, every time I get there and we do this, I get, the lump in the throat and really, shed a tear or two, getting choked up now talking about it, but shed a tear or two as we go about, this particular aspect that you brought to the ride.
Yeah, well, I will tell you about it, but then we're going to make a change for this year.
Cool. Did it have to be a world premiere right here?
Yes, here we go. First announcement right here. So when I came on board, we introduced a new aspect on day 2 called the Victory Lap. And this was to really bring the mission back into focus of why we ride, why we're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, why we're riding over 100 miles, why we're fundraising. And so we would have all riders living with MS that would line up at the finish line or start line on Sunday. And they would do a 1 mile victory lap around the campus at CSU in Fort Collins. While everybody else that was staff, volunteers, riders, friends, supporters, anything else, we would have signs and everything and just cheer. And again, just really support why we're here. Like, what is our purpose? And that was just very important to me to make sure that we always understand why. So we'll have good days and bad days, but this is why we're here.
Yeah, and like you said, even just there's lots of people at the start line and the cowbells and the cheers, but as you go out and where we've been doing it in Fort Collins, as you go down, there's a big loop and you come back around and lots of people lined up around the loop, family members and people just visiting. So, like you said, a lot of really great support that again brings it home. Even for somebody riding with MS, I always feel the love. I mean, I understand there are thousands of people just at our ride doing this to benefit me and others. That doesn't, lose its value, but there is something just impactful about just seeing it, the visceral nature of it, just to see people standing there and cheering, not for you, but with you. So
yeah, and that's what we want it to be. It's just, and I also think it's great for maybe, we have a few corporate teams that ride with us, and so some of them, they just ride because maybe they're just cycle enthusiasts, or their cube partner was like, hey, I'm doing this bike ride this weekend, you should come and do it. So it also, I feel like it's great because then they can literally see why they're riding and make their own connection, have those people that they can like visually see. And so I think it's helpful for everybody at the ride.
Which, by the way, before you get to your announcement part, I again talked to a number of people recently through these podcasts, and there are at least 3 that have mentioned when you talk about how you get involved, it's because their work was involved. They knew nothing about MS, but their work was like, hey, we're doing this bike ride, you've got to ride. Or a friend was like, hey, I do this bike ride, you should join, it's fun. And so, a lot of people have joined that way, just in that kind of connection, which is awesome. And once they get in, like we talked about, it's addictive. It's a great event, and this is another way to hammer it home as to why it's being done.
Yeah. Well, for the special announcement, so we are changing from a victory lap to we're calling it a champions finish. And we are going to do it on Saturday instead of Sunday. To hopefully those that only want to do a 1-day ride will be able to participate in. We are going to invite anybody that's on site to participate. So whether you're a rider, a volunteer, a family member, a sponsor, a spectator, just really any staff included, anybody that's living with MS, we are going to have you stand on the other side and you'll walk across together. And there'll be a couple of other fun things that I want to give away yet.
Cool.
But we decided to do it this way to make it more inclusive to those who can't ride anymore or are volunteers. And so then, they can feel that special moment and still get all that cheer and love and support from everybody else. So we're going to change a little bit, but it'll still be great.
That's a great touch. I mean, because like you said, there are a lot of people who just can't ride. Mm-hmm. There are tons of the volunteers have MS and either can't ride or just volunteer instead, whatever their reasons are. That's a great way to get them involved in the actual moment, not just cheering on the sidelines, but actually involved in that special moment of getting that appreciation and that recognition.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. We've had a couple of other bike MS events across the country who've done this, and they say it's great and it's very inclusive, and so we decided, well, we should definitely do that here in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think our elevation definitely affects not having as many riders living with MS, and so this is just again being able to bring everybody directly to the mission and showing our support for not just riders, but for volunteers, staff, everybody else. So
That's interesting. I never thought about that. So you think that's a pretty solid fact in that there are more riders with MS in other areas where it's not as high altitude, where
I'm not sure if it's like a fact, but I just know, I mean, we have 1,500 riders and we have less than 100 that live with MS that ride in our ride. And so I feel like it fluctuates. So, Oregon is like a 400 rider. And so when they have 20, 50 people that I don't remember exactly the number for Oregon, but, it feels a little bit larger.
Higher percentage. Yeah, definitely higher percentage riders. Yeah.
I do know that, Colorado is a passport destination ride. We get a lot of people that come here that don't live with MS that want to do our ride. And so I know that we are a destination ride for that. But I know that we have a higher number of volunteers that live with MS than we do riders.
Yeah, no, I try to talk to the volunteers, as I'm going through, and most of them, they thank the riders that, I don't typically have an I ride with MS jersey on either. If I'm riding the first day, it's our team jersey, and then the next day I'll ride in my little butterfly outfit. So
unicorn.
Yeah, I got to change it up. I got a friend who said I got to change it up this year. He's going to double his donation if I change it up to something different. So I got to figure out what that is.
I mean, that's a great incentive.
No, yeah, whatever, man. I got to figure it out, though. I got to figure out what is rideable, because he's like, well, do this. It's like, well, picture me riding a bike in that. I can't do that. It's like, you can wear a trash can. It's like, no, that ain't happening. Whatever.
That sounds sweaty and uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I gotta be realistic about, what I put on, because I do still have to pedal a bike 75 miles, hopefully.
Yeah. I know one of our other team captains who lives with MS, her incentive, if she reaches X amount of dollars, she's going to wear a hula girl outfit. I'm like, that, I don't know if that sounds cold or sweaty. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, but I was like, hey, whatever raises the dollars.
That's kind of where I'm at. It's like, I've done some crazy things. I've posted them out before, but I've got one friend who's always he's always the one. It's like, hey, if you do something crazy, I was like, yeah. Also, my wife's boss is the same way. I've done, every year he's like, if you do this, and so like last year I sang a song in Romanian. No, was it Romanian? Maybe it was. That doesn't sound right. It wasn't Ukrainian. It was a foreign language, and I had to learn the song, and so I did. Yeah. It was a song about drinking beer, and it was the easiest one I could find to learn, and so I learned it. And we went to this bar down on Colfax. I'm going to remember it right after I'm done. That what country?
So you had to do it as a public appearance too.
Yeah, so in public, he's there's a whole crazy story behind it. He inherited a castle which he and his siblings then sold in this country. Like it was an uncle, and they were the sole heirs, and he owned this castle, and like, we're gonna call it Romania, but it wasn't. But he owned this castle, and so they sold it. And he was having this big kind of party, and it happened to coincide with my asking for the donation. He's like, "Cool, yeah, I'll donate X amount of dollars, but I'll donate double that if you come down and sing a song in Romanian at this bar." At this time we're having this party. So yeah, there's like 100 people there, and
my gosh!
At some point he stopped. He's like, "Everybody, listen, stop. Here's Bobby. Here's his story, and he's got a song for us." So here I popped up and sang Pivo.
I guess you're a theater kid, so it wasn't as bad as some people might think.
Yeah, it wasn't a stretch.
Yeah. And two, it just goes to show you could literally do anything to raise money.
That's right, exactly. Whatever it takes, man, we're gonna do it.
I wish I was there though. I would have loved to see this.
There's a video. I'm gonna make sure you get it. So if you missed it, there's a video of me singing that.
That's great.
No, there's so many great fundraisers, and it's because this is a really passionate ride, Colorado. You mentioned the passport. I'm passporting on June 1st to the Colonial Crossroad, I think it's called, in Virginia.
Yeah.
Yep. John Snurka, another teammate, John and I are riding. He actually was the one that mentioned it. He's got a friend who lives in Richmond, and he's like, he's got a team, and he's like, I want to go ride it. Would you go ride it with me? I was like, yeah, my parents live in Richmond. I'm from the area. I've ridden, I started bike MS in Virginia. So, they take a route that's kind of a really nice, it's all trail for the most part. So it's a bike trail. It's a famous bike trail in Virginia. That's a good section that goes from Richmond down to Williamsburg. So it should be a beautiful ride. Again, as long as weather holds out and everything, it should be a beautiful ride. It's not super humid, which Virginia can get. Denver and Colorado. We have humidity out here. It can be hot, but it's just dry hot. And the first ride I did in Virginia was 100 degrees and humid, like 100% humidity. It was just stupid. It was just a stupid, drenchy ride the whole time.
That's how it is. And I feel like Oregon, it's Pacific Northwest. Like we joked about it earlier, you get 2 days of sunshine the entire year, which obviously it's a little bit more, but it's not that much of a stretch. And so, but we have pretty mild summers, it's like 70s, 80s. Without a doubt, Bike MS weekend will come along. It'll be 101. I'm like, it doesn't ever get this hot. Why does it have to be bike weekend?
Right?
Yeah. So it's not ideal, but I guess it's better than a tornado.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take heat over tornado.
Yeah.
Any day. Yeah, much better riding conditions. Anything we're missing on Bike MS that we want to get off our chest today? That folks want to know. We want to keep getting people signed up and getting those donations rolling. But anything top of mind that we haven't talked about as far as the event?
I mean, it's a great event. The next year, so 2025, is a big milestone for Bike MS Colorado. So for anybody who, hasn't rode in a couple of years or has been contemplating and this is just not the right year, definitely check us out next year. It's going to be a lot of changes are coming down the pipeline for everything across the board, on top of it being a big anniversary party. So, this year is obviously still going to be great, but next year is definitely going to be it'll be like a New Year's Eve style. It's going to be a huge
party. I'm going to take a guess. Is it the 40th anniversary?
It is, yes.
Oh wow!
So we have some fun things to plan on that to go with it. So
cool.
Yeah.
Over the hill and back up the hill and down the hill. That's awesome. Cool. I'm looking forward to that, obviously, because I'll be here riding that thing with our team, and that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to get party cones instead of just regular cones.
I like it. We're going to amp the cone up for sure. 40th anniversary. I'm writing that down. We need a 40th anniversary cone. And I'm sure our team, the team's been around we probably should start celebrating our own milestones, because we've been doing this for quite a while.
Yeah, well, you mean your team celebrated a milestone in 2023 for raising $1 million. So that's nothing to blink at either.
It's incredible,
that's a huge achievement.
Yeah, and I know there's a couple other teams on the precipice of doing this. That's incredible to have teams stay around that long. It takes a lot. I mean, you've been doing your job, and I think were you more of a before your current job, or you work with teams? You still work with teams, right? Because you're working with our team. So yeah, just keeping these teams together and keeping them motivated. Having a good captain to see.
Something like that.
Captains, having good captains in place, stop being fancy, and it takes a lot, and it takes the passion, and we've been lucky to have really passionate people doing this, and what's funny is aside from myself, when I did, I've kind of been a co-captain and a sideline helper for a while. I captained the team in 2020. It just happened to be, Craig asked me to step up and do it, and it turned out to be the pandemic year.
Yeah.
So I fell sort of through that year.
It's no easy take on to be a bike captain, it's one to just, motivate yourself to ride your bike and to fundraise, but then to motivate your team as well. And, the bigger the team, the more hard it
Yeah,
is. And you
you
guys do
bet.
have a bigger team. And so,
Yeah,
but you have so many people on your team that are so passionate about the ride and the cause, and have broken your own individual
yeah,
milestones, such as yourself, who's raised over $100,000. I think Craig's going to break 100,000 this year as well.
yeah.
And so you have a lot of people on your team that are right on that cusp too, and then it all rolls up, as to why you guys have raised the $1 million. So
Yeah, no, and that's what it is. It's about, when you talk about the team sports, it takes, it's not just a one person thing. I mean, one quarterback, like the Broncos right now are, just flailing around because they need a quarterback. But you could put the best quarterback on a team, and they're still not great without the rest of the team. And so,
yeah,
when you get all these pieces in place, when you get so many good teammates, it just makes it easy. They love showing up to do this. You get a good cadence on how the team operates, and man, it really does make it easy. It actually doesn't seem that difficult when you've
right.
got the right people, like our team, a lot of other teams, it just kind of flows so nicely. It doesn't seem like it's a big, heavy lift.
Yeah, what do they say? If you do what you love, you never work.
That's kind of what this is. It's a labor of love for
Yeah.
anybody that's doing this. I mean, I rarely find it, meet anybody where I feel like, wow, they really don't feel like they want to be here. Somebody dragged them into this and they're just not buying into it. That's a pretty
That's
rare.
not our case. We
Yeah.
have people that are like, okay, so can we sign up already? I'm like, hold on. We're gonna finish this one first.
Right. They're like midstream riding is like, Crystal, by the way, I want to get going signing up, because they're enjoying it so much. Well, I really appreciate having you on. I've got I've been doing fast rapid fire questions to end the show.
Sure.
I'm just going to throw some stuff at you. You talked about vinyl. I'll do two-part. What's your favorite record you own, and what's the last record you bought?
I had a feeling you might ask me this question. And so I've been trying. It's so hard.
It's too hard. I know.
I have a couple of like very nice records, such as I have Michael Jackson's Bad album and the original pressing still sealed. So that's kind of a pretty great album. But for like personally, that doesn't really mean that much to anybody else. I have every single copy of Old Dominion, which is a country band. Every single one of their records is signed. And so I'm going to loop them as one record.
Yeah.
They're my second favorite band. And so like just being able to have them all signed is just pretty great for me. One of them is on display.
You got them on display, which is nice. I need to do more of that. I have no records displayed. I've got them all in cubicles from IKEA, by the way. If you're out there and you're looking for vinyl storage,
IKEA.
The Malm, I forget the name of it, whatever it is. You get the IKEA. Yeah, it's so perfect. I've got I think every variation. I've got like the 16 cube, the 9 cube, the 4 cube.
Yeah,
I've got them all.
I'm almost ready to buy my next shelf. I'm only on one shelf at the moment, but I'm almost ready for my second one. And then the last record I bought, I bought like 6 of them at this. I found a new record store up in Netherland, and I bought a Foreigner album and a Beatles album. And I don't remember the other one. We bought 6, but those are the 2 that I remember right now.
You're right. It's difficult. I'm going to throw mine out there, but it is difficult to figure out. Like, there's almost zero favorite album. But I'm gonna for today, I'm going to throw out AC/DC's Back in Black. Ooh. Because I still have my original copy that I bought when it came out in like 1980 or 81, whatever it was. I bought it at Kmart. With my piddly allowance, I saved up and I went in there with my hands full of nickels. Like, I made that AC/DC. And so that has always been a one of my, it's, from start to finish, I get every song is just great.
Yeah.
So I do like that one. So I'll put that one out there as my, favorite, but I was so stoked. I a big thrifter. I go to record stores. I don't typically like to pay for record store albums. I mean, it's good. If I go to a city, if I'm traveling, I'll go to a local record store and maybe buy one thing because I like to support local record store business. But I just don't spend a lot of money on records that way. I usually go to, I'm a heavy thrifter, and I'll just, thrift and stop, every other day and just keep poking my head in the albums. And I was out at my parents' and stopped in at the thrift store, and somebody had just got dropped off like a huge selection of every Beatles album. So I bought, and I actually own them all, but I could not buy them for $1. So pretty much every Beatles album that you would want in your collection. I have now again, because I just had, I'll figure I'd give them to somebody. But that wasn't the one. The one that I really liked was Joni Mitchell. There's a Joni Mitchell album. I didn't even know the name of it, but it's got a watercolor painting of Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, I have that album too.
Yeah, for that one, and it's one that I wanted for the collection. It's a beautiful cover, and obviously she's just an incredible artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, holy mackerel! Not only did I find all these cool Beatle albums, which I'll gift to somebody at some point along the way, but this album is what I've been looking for. Yes, I'm sure there's some people here. I am down. I'm like you. I'm at the point where I'm downsizing my collection now. Like I went through it. I had my basement flooded, and I had to pull all the records out of the basement. I was like, why did I buy all these albums? This is I'm like working out, like lifting, trying to lift as many as I can without dropping them, and it's like doing squats up the stairs, and it was nuts.
When you move, if you ever move, right? Most movers don't cover records. It's not covered in the insurance. I had to move all of mine myself because they weren't covered. So
yes, that's the thing. I was like, I'm downsizing now. I'm well, and I pulled out all the duplicates, like, because you forget what you have, and like, I just see it's like, oh, that's cool.
Mine are alphabetized in a Google Doc because I started buying duplicates already, and so I have what I own in a wish list because I also started buying duplicates.
I started to try to use Discogs. Which is cool because you can access it and whatever. But yeah, I didn't start so I have to go back and like put all these in. So I'm slowly trying to get them in, but man, it's a slog. Cool. Most inspirational thing you've seen at the finish line?
Oh, it's not, I guess it's kind of at the finish line, but it's more of like a short story. So we have a rider that lives with MS, and every single year, she rides with her husband, and she's a little bit slower than her husband, and her husband would get to the rest stop, and then he would take off, and then she would never feel like that she could, hang out at the rest stop and like, really enjoy her time because she's like, oh man, I gotta go catch my husband. Well, 2 years ago, we allow e-bikes on course now, and she rides an e-bike, and it was the first time she got to beat her husband to the finish line, and that was just so great for me. And I mean, she didn't use her e-bike all of the time, obviously, but enough that she could keep up with him and then beat him for the first time, and that was just like the greatest story. And I always use that story when people talk about, oh, why do you allow e-bikes? I'm like, well, let me tell you why, because of this reason.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite stories.
I mean, that's a huge benefit. I was talking to somebody there's some people like, this person said, I don't think I'd want to ride an e-bike, at least now. And that's just a kind of a challenge thing for themselves. Like, hey, I've got MS, but I'm challenging myself. You get to a point where maybe like I've debated, if I want to keep riding and not wreck my body for a week, is it time to switch to an e-bike? So maybe I have a shorter recovery time. You still do a lot of work. It's not just a free ride. I can't kick back and let this thing drive. There's still pedaling involved. It's pedal assist bike. You can do different versions of it.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own journey. And so it's really cool that folks who may not have been either an older riders, even like, we've got a guy on our team who switched to an e-bike. He'd been riding the ride for his son for years and then switched to an e-bike because he wanted to keep doing it, but he physically couldn't anymore. So just gives everybody an opportunity to keep going.
Yep. It allows everybody to keep pedaling.
Yeah, awesome. Yep. Last question. I should mind. This is funny. I wonder if this is, we were talking about Catherine Danakin, and she said the first one she finished, she came across crying, and I swear to you, my favorite memory was one. I was at the finish line, and a gal came across, and I in my mind, I think it was her. It wasn't too long ago, and she was in tears and talking about how she just finished her first ride, and I broke down in tears. I mean, I didn't even talk to her. I just saw her. It was like just saw her coming across, and she met her, her family there, and it was just such an emotional moment. And there's so many like that. I mean, if you stand at the finish line for 15 minutes, you see people riding across and just beaming smiles, and some people breaking down because it's been a grueling afternoon, and just all parts of it. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Last one, favorite left-hand beer.
Well, I don't know what the beer is called, but I am like a beer connoisseur. I feel like being from the Pacific Northwest, but they make a very great West Coast IPA, whatever their West Coast is. But I really only drink IPAs, and theirs is top of tier.
Nice. Yeah. I started to stop drinking IPAs. They were killing me. Just like a sip of IPA and I would be like, out of sorts for a week for some reason. And it snuck up on me. Like I started drinking them and I was like, okay, I kind of got a taste for them. I like them. And then at some point something changed and I just couldn't drink them anymore. So I stopped. I
That's
can
how I
drink
feel
nitro.
Oh, nitro. See, now I can't really drink the dark beers that well. I haven't
That's the only
gotten
one I
that
can drink.
palate yet.
Yeah. That's the only one that seems to agree with my body at this point in my life. And I'm used to, there was a point like I drank beer for a long time as a younger person, and that was definitely cheap, crappy beer, right? It was just whatever you could afford, when you're 18,
Whatever that's not warm.
Yeah, and sometimes they're warm. It's like when you're desperate on a Friday afternoon, evening, or whatever, you drink whatever you can. And then I don't think I drank beer for a long time. I switched to like maybe cocktails or whatever, wine, and to go back to when craft beer started really getting up, to kind of go back to beer again. I do prefer a darker beer anyway, so it's okay that it's the one that agrees with me.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate having you on. I love talking about, obviously talking about multiple sclerosis and all we're doing and the good we're doing. And we could probably keep this conversation going about all the other good things that we didn't talk about.
Sure.
And we'll save that for the next time. I'm planning, I think, to have maybe a panel on fundraising, and maybe we can have you on to help moderate that with a couple other top fundraisers, and just kind of talk about the things we do to or don't do, and just how we go about, reaching out to people, because, that could be a huge barrier to entry, I think, for a lot of folks when it comes to doing a ride like this. They don't mind riding. The physical part's not bad, but then it's like the fear of, but I have to ask for this money, this $400 I've got to reach. And that just is so foreign to some folks that, or maybe they're doing other things, and just how do you get past that point? So yeah, I would love to have you back on.
That'd be a fun experience. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts too.
Yeah, I've been on one before, but I think, those are kind of fun to do, just because there's so many folks doing this with different ideas and different ways of going about it, between fundraisers and letters and, personal, like email, whatever they're doing. Everybody kind of does it a little bit differently. And it's always fun to hear how it goes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bobby.
Thanks again, Crystal. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.